How will Isabella calm the storm of Alexander's anger and disappointment? How will the secret with Lucas affect her relationship with Alexander? Don't want to miss how Isabella survives among the wolves. Subscribe now to follow her every thrilling step. 34 Isabella SP.OV. I closed my eyes, letting my body slide down the wall slowly. For the last hour I had been standing here waiting at the door of the elevator for Alexander to make an appearance. It has took all my willpower not to spring forward and take matters into my own hands, but I knew I had to be patient. He was going to be angry, no doubt, and I didn't want to aggravate him even more. I had so many questions swarming in my mind. I knew I was going to pound him with them as soon as my eyes set on him, which probably would make matters worse. He hates it when I ask him numerous questions. As the time passed, I began to build up anger. It was only one kiss that meant absolutely nothing. He was supposed to be an adult and he was acting like a child in this situation. I closed my eyes as I leant my head against the hard wall. It was now God knows what time at night. My eyes were tired and heavy, but all I wanted to do was see Alexander. I had so many answers I needed to know. Alexander's P.O.V. I closed my eyes, letting my sweat-covered heavy body lean against the elevator wall. As I brought my hand up to my face, pinching the bridge of my nose, attempting to shift the busting headache that took over both my human and wolf body. My jaw and fists both clenched tight as my anger still had not fully disappeared even after hours of running, thinking, and more running, until I realized the sun had now risen and I had no more energy left in me. I felt physically sick that a person who I thought I could trust with Isabella's life betrayed me. My own flesh and blood betrayed me. I felt my anger began to rise once more as the thoughts I had been pushing aside from the last couple of hours resurfaced, and all I could think of punching his face, kicking his ribs when the elevator doors dinged open. As soon as my eyes landed on Isabella, asleep, her body spread out on the cold wooden floor right before the elevator, her face innocent and her mouth slightly ajar as she took deep breaths. For a second I couldn't remember why I was angry. I knew she was lying. She wasn't the one who kissed Lucas. I knew her too well now that I could see through her lies. I leant down before I scooped her up, her limpness body laying in my arms as I carried her towards the bedroom. I let my eyes fall on her tear-stained face as her face remained in a scrunched-up position. I had caused her so much hurt and pain in the past couple of months. No wonder she hates me. I had made my mate hate me. She was the only person on this earth I truly cared about. She was the only thing that mattered to me, and from now on I was going to put her first. I wasn't going to cause her any more grief than I intended. She never asked for any of this. She is a 17-year-old girl, a child on the other side of the world, away from her family. And what do? Basically tell her to get over herself and stop acting like a child. I felt her stir in my arms as I lay her down on the bed, pulling the blankets around her, but not a second later she was fast asleep again. I had so much love in my body for this one person, it scared me. I had a crappy way of showing it, but I hated loving her at the same time. It made me vulnerable and weak, but I wasn't going to screw up again, not this time. Isabella SP.OV. I groaned as I attempted to stretch out, only for my neck to erupt in a sudden pain as I remembered that I had fallen asleep on the floor last night. I opened my eyes only for a second later to shut them once again, preventing from the light from burning my eyes. Then it hit me. Alexander had to have put me in bed when he got home last night. I quickly pulled the covers down, pulling myself out of bed, letting my eyes adjust to the bright sunlight streaming in from the window before my eyes scanned the room. No Alexander in sight. My legs quickly moved towards the bedroom door, yanking it open for my eyes to snap towards the kitchen door, which was slightly ajar. Fucking hell, Alexander cursed, following by a clanging of pans that I assumed dropped to the floor. I took a deep breath. Keep a clear head and don't cause an argument. Unless he picks a fight with me. I slowly pushed the door open. I didn't know what his mood was going to be. Was he going to be angry at me? Was he going to explode the moment he set eyes on me? Or was he going to go back to being the same cold, heartless Alexander? I set my eyes on him as he stood bare-chested behind the cooker, the countertops littered with different-sized pots and pans with items unrecognizable. They were that burnt and packets of bacon laying open. His eyes shot up to meet mine. The goldness now completely disappeared, now replaced by his bright blue ones. As he stared up at me, his eyes looked so innocent, like he hasn't just beaten his brother. I opened my mouth to speak, only for Alexander to hold his hand up, which held a frying wand. Yesterday is in the past. Let's draw a line underneath it and we don't have to talk about it again. I want to move on and forget about it, okay? The only thing that matters is you and me now, Alexander spoke as his eyes flicked towards me, and his already burning bacon. A sigh of relief escaped my lips. He wasn't angry at me. He was the caring and loving Alexander the first was just getting to know. There was so many questions I had yet to find the answers, but I held off. If he was happy enough to not mention yesterday, then so was I. I can get my answers another time. I took his positive mood as a sign he didn't murder his brother. Your bacon's burning, I pointed out as I moved towards the countertop, pulling myself onto a stool as I leaned over the mess of the kitchen to see now black strips of bacon sizzling on the pan. Like you could do any better, he fired back, and I looked up to see a small but visible smile playing on his face as he pushed the pan aside to join the countless others of the food that he was unable to cook. This was the Alexander the first enjoyed. The gentle and kind Alexander who had patience for me. I swear to God I don't know how you convinced me to do this, but you are wearing a helmet, Alexander continued to argue, pushing the bicycle helmet into my hands. It's riding a horse, Alexander. I'm not going to fall off and split my head open. It will look so stupid, I groaned. After almost an hour of convincing him to go horse riding, we were now spending an extra 10 minutes arguing over me wearing a stupid helmet. You're fragile, love. Last time you fell off the horse and got yourself a concussion, remember? Just put the stupid helmet, Alexander sighed as I could see he was trying not to lose his patience with me, as he took the helmet from my hands, placing it on top of my head. I sighed. This was a pointless row that I wasn't going to let become anything more, so I will just suck it up and wear the helmet. I remembered falling off Grandma's horse like it was yesterday, but yet it felt so long ago when it has just been a mere few months. I handed the reins to Alexander of the black horse I was going to attempt to get on successfully, only for Alexander a few seconds later is to push me up. Take it easy, Isabella. I'm not joking, Alexander warned as he handed me the reins and easily climbed up on his own horse. Just take it slow for now, he added. His eyes remained glued to mine as if he was ready to spring into action if something were to happen. I gently kicked the horse forward into a walk as I kept my eyes glued to the green grass ahead. My head was all over the place. I had bit my tongue all morning, not wanting to bombard with questions, but I could barely hold it in any longer. What's a rogue? I questioned, my voice quiet as the breeze filled the silence, not letting my eyes trail up to Alexander. You heard that yesterday. He dodged my question as I felt his state burn into the side of my head. However, I refused to look up. If I looked at him, I wouldn't get my answers. I nodded in response, presuming that he was looking at me. He's not allowed back on this land, Isabella. He's not a part of the pack. Alexander's refusal to even breathe his brother's name as he said the sentence in such disgust. However, it allowed me to breathe a small sigh of relief. He was alive and okay. But I began letting my mouth take over, which never ended well. It was only one stupid kiss that honestly meant nothing. There was no need for Lucas to be like a rogue or be kicked out. I don't want to talk about it anymore, Alexander cut me off, sighing as he was losing his patience with me. What about your mum and dad? Won't they want to see him? I kept pushing even though I knew that I shouldn't. I had never asked about his parents before, nor has he ever brought them up. I finally broke my stare of the ground to meet Alexander's eyes after a minute of silence to see that he was not staring at me anymore but looking ahead. Shit. I shouldn't have brought it up, I should have just shut up. I looked back towards the field ahead before I tightened my grip on the reins of the horse and giving it a little kick forward to push forwards faster. This was my life now, I had to accept it. 35 Isabella SP. Oh, V. You can change your mind, you can start Richardoro. Next week if you're not ready, Alexander sighed, his blue eyes boring into my own as he leaned against the elevator wall, his arms folded over one another. I think you're the one that's not ready. It's been months and I never thought I'd see the day where I miss going to school. I shrugged my shoulders. I miss going to school, seeing my friends, and I wanted that freedom back again. 6 hours of independence. However, the small pit in my Richardac slowly building told me otherwise as we got closer and left the bounds of the house where I had barely left without Alexander's supervision. It's been over a month filled with me slowly convincing Alexander to give me independence. I'm almost sure he has accepted that even if I tried I wasn't going to get very far. Now after days spent downstairs with Carly, who I had grown friendly with, whole Alexander was off. I wanted to get out, see other people, bar the small group of people I see daily. Right. You know they are all wolves. There is PE when they shift in the woods. I'll make sure you're in a room doing something, all right? Benjamin, he's going to be a kind of bodyguard. You promise none of that. I groaned. I'm trying, all right. Do you think it's easy for me to just let you go for 6 hours? It will give me an easier mind. It will be like he's not there. If you feel like you don't want to be there, just tell him and he will get you out, Alexander assured as the elevator dinged open. That's going to look stupid. I'll already look stupid anyway. First because they are all like wolves, and now a babysitter will be following me around, I huffed as he stepped out of the elevator holding his hand out, rolling his eyes. Why did I even think in the first place I would be able to go by myself? I sighed before taking his hand and exiting the elevator. This was the best it was going to get. My eyes landed on the large building as we turned the corner, my short legs struggling to keep up with Alexander's the whole 15-minute walk. I stopped in my tracks as the building came into view. It was extremely large and noise radiated before I even turned the corner. There seemed to be hundreds of children younger than my age gathered around outside, rushing inside and walking towards. Suddenly this didn't seem like a good idea. Second thoughts. Alexander smirked slightly as he stopped once he realized I wasn't following. Maybe I should wait a little longer, I nodded to assure myself more than anything. Just last month I was scared to be in a room with one bloody wolf, now I would be surrounded by them. Without Alexander. Don't get nervous, love, it's overwhelming, I know. Just do what I do. Use fear to get them to listen to you, Alexander shrugged, resulting in me easing my arm and punching him in the shoulder. I'm only joking, you'll be fine, it wasn't that long ago I was at this school. Look, do you want me to go in with you? Alexander asked once he realized his speech wasn't reassuring me in any way. No. I don't want to look like a complete fruit, I exclaimed as he let out a laugh. It feels weird, Alexander and I were actually communicating civilly. For once he wasn't being as much of the arrogant, controlling dickhead he previously was. Right, Benjamin is in the main office, he will bring you to your classes. Go now or you'll be late. Alexander moved behind me, his hand placed on my back, urging me to walk forward. The once hundreds of children had now disappeared inside. I took a deep breath, this was going to be a good thing for me, it would be scary for an hour or so, then I'll be okay. I urged my feet to walk forward, fighting the urge just to turn around and run back to the safety and comfort of the house. I didn't look back as I increased my speed towards the stairs leading up to the building. Good luck, love, Alexander's voice shouted behind me as I remained my view ahead of me, not turning around to face him. I reached large doors, pulling open one of the handles and forcing my legs to move inside. My eyes scanned the large empty hallway, filled dull brown walls lined with lockers on both sides. How did everyone manage to disappear that quickly? Suddenly my idea of independence didn't seem so appealing anymore. I've never been alone before. Since I was little I had my group of mates that all went to the same school. I had my family and then I had Alexander. I began to slowly make my way down the long hallway, my footsteps echoing through the empty hallway as I quickened my pace as I heard the chatter of voices as I walked closer. As I walked, my eyes adverted to peer into the small windows of the classrooms, only to be met with eyes boring into my own, resulting in me snapping my own head forward. As I reached the end of the hallway I turned to the left and I have never been so relieved to see the front desk. Behind it 2 women who previously were chattering noisily, now in silence as their gazes landed on me. Leaning against the front desk, eyes glued to his phone, stood a tall man, dark curly hair, looked no more than 20. Oh, Looney, you're here. After a moment of silence that felt like a whole lifted erupted as she bounced of her seat behind the desk and rushed over towards me. Only then did the other man, who I'm almost sure must be Benjamin, glanced up, shoving his phone in his pocket. Isabella's all right, I attempted at a smile as the woman placed her hands on my shoulders, pushing me into her body in a deathly tight embrace. We have been dying to get a look at you since you arrived, dear.
Maggie come get a look.
The women exclaimed in my ear as I stood there in shock. My eyes glanced towards Prescott, who held a small smirk on his face, shaking his head. Let's be gentle with her. Don't want to break her on her first day. Preston chuckled as the women's tight embrace loosened and I took a small step backwards. See, you frightened her. The other women came around from the front desk. I'm assuming she was Maggie. The 3 stood just steps in front of me, all staring at me. The 2 women gazing wide-eyed. Prescott glanced at his watch every few seconds. It's okay, I attempted to reassure them. It felt weird. These people didn't seem like in 1 second they could transform into murdering beasts. Well, Katie and Maggie, it's time we got going. The Luna is already late for her first class. Benjamin turned on his heel and began to walk down the corridor at a fast speed. I took that as a cue to follow him, so I quickly offered the 2 ladies, whose eyes hadn't left me once, a small smile as I moved past them, rushing to catch up with Benjamin. My name's Isabella, the first reminded him. I didn't like being called the term Luna. It felt strange and I didn't want all that responsibility that came along with it. Well, that's what Alexander said. Isabella, alright, so I got your schedule, we can sort out your locker and stuff later. You have maths first period, which is on the 3rd floor, first door to your left. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask me, because Alexander will have my head if anything happens to you. I'm Prescott, by the way, he rambled as I trailed along climbing a flight of stairs, half of his information going in one ear and out the other as he spoke that fast. After a serious amount of climbing stairs, we reached the destination. The halls were empty and barely any sounds came from the classrooms we passed. You're not coming in, are you? I asked as we slowed to a stop in front of what I presumed was my new maths class. Do you want me to? He questioned, easing his eyebrows slightly as he handed me over a few pencils and my schedule. As I shook my head, he almost breathed a sigh of relief. I'll be here in an hour to bring you to your next class, okay? He assured me, throwing a small smile before he turned on his heel and began striding down the corridor. Anything you need, don't forget to ask me, he exclaimed, not bothering to turn around from his potion as he dissipated down the staircase. I took a deep breath before I turned my body to face the door. There was no window allowing me to glance in before I actually forced myself to go in. I placed my hand on the handle. This wasn't a bad thing. This was a step in the best direction. I was getting independence. I was going to be a normal teenager again. If normal counts as attending a werewolf school. I shook my head. I needed to stop reminding myself that I was surrounded by beasts that could tear my guts out at any second. The ladies at the desk was friendly and so was Benjamin. There was no need for me to be frightened. Before I could allow myself to turn around and run back down the stairs, I swung the door open, allowing myself to gain a better view at the people whose now view snapped in my direction. I felt my heart sink as my eyes traveled around the room, my gaze falling on numerous non-blinking eyes staring back up at me. What was I supposed to do now? I should have knocked. Was I stupid thinking that this would actually feel like normal? You must be our Luna. My gaze adverted to a woman leaning against one of the windows on the far end of the room. She held a cold, firm face as she motioned me to walk into the room further. At least there isn't much of a difference between my teachers. I bit my tongue slightly, preventing me from correcting her on my name. I hated the term everyone here seemed so adamant on calling me. I'm pretty sure everyone could hear me swallow as the room remained silent as I stepped into the classroom, shutting the door gently behind me. Luna. There is a free seat beside me, a voice piped up from the middle row of the classroom. My eyes landed on a girl, her red hair curling down her face as she offered me a small smile. At least everyone wasn't so heartless. I glanced back up at the teacher, who offered no objections, and quickly made my way down the aisle, trying to ignore the burning gazes being shot in my direction as I slumped down on the seat, breathing a sigh of relief. That was the scary part over. I'm Terry. After a few moments of silence, the girl piped up once more, and I glanced over, sending her a small smile as my beating heart began to slow down. Isabella the first responded, as the girl's smile never fell from her face as I felt her gaze on me, even when I turned to the front of the room. Maybe this won't be so bad after all. 36 Isabella's P.O.V. If you're going to be friends with us, you have to spill the tea on Alpha. Is it true that the whole top floor of the main pack house is all his? I heard that he had a room specifically designed for torture, Anton. One of Terry's friend rambled as he pushed aside his tray filled with food to lean on closer. Shut up. You've known the girl 2 days and I'm sure you have already given her a massive headache. You don't have to answer anything if you don't want to. Terry cut his ramble off, jamming her elbow into the side of his ribs to add to the blow. It was now my second day at the wolf school. Yesterday Terry had remained glued to my side until Prescott said I had to leave. I was grateful for her, and her 2 friends she introduced to me, Anton and Wes. They seemed to look past the whole human and Luna thing and talk to me like normal people. However, the same could not have been said for the hundreds of other students and teachers within the school whose eyes burnt into the back of my head all day. Each person had fixed their gaze on me and was too afraid to say a word to me. Don't be stupid, I don't know about the whole torture thing. I'm literally allowed in 3 rooms. I smiled at Anton as his eyes widened and he leaned his body forward as if he was taking in each and every word, specially to ensure he didn't forget. Your turn. I'm sure you have questions for us. It's about time Anton gave you a turn. Wes quickly spoke to prevent Anton's never-ending list of questions to begin. Yesterday was worse. He grilled me as if I was in police custody, but I didn't mind. I was glad someone wanted to talk to me. I furrowed my eyebrows. I had so many thoughts and questions, yet when someone questioned me my mind suddenly went blank, until my mind wandered to Richard. Is it true that everyone in this pack is monsters that kill anyone? My voice drawled low. I felt like a bitch for asking. Terry, Anton and Wes were nothing but nice to me. I could never picture them harming someone on purpose, but I needed to settle my mind. Well, not every pack is perfect and ours is far from it. We have our fair share of enemies, but from my perspective, no, I wouldn't say we were all monsters. Kane, on the other hand, he's sitting behind you, is another story. He was chosen to be a pack warrior. Wes explained, his voice dropping lower to that it was barely audible over the loud chatter of the dining room hall. I turned my body to search for Kane when my eyes fell on a pair of green ones. His stature was large as he was slumped over in the small chair. His eyes bore into mine and I quickly shot around in my seat.
Jesús, Isabella.
You made that so obvious, Terry groaned as she shook her head. Exchanging glances with Anton and Wes. Who were you talking to again? Alexander questioned as he quickened his pace on the treadmill. His eyes glancing over at mine as I sat on top of another workout machine. Despite his quick pace, his breathing never quickened nor a sweat fall from his face. Terry, I met her in my first class. She was so nice, literally was the only one that would talk to me. She introduced me to her friends Wes and Anton. I reminded him as I averted my eyes from a shirtless Alexander running on the treadmill, the muscles in his legs flexing every second as the loud noise from the machine filled the silence in the gym. Why is almost everyone there too afraid to talk to me? I asked after a few minutes of silence entered the gym as his gaze landed on me. That's because, love, they are afraid of me. A smirk formed on his face as his quick-paced running came to a stop and the loud noise of the treadmill that was filling the empty gym silenced. I rolled my eyes, forcing the corners of my lips not to rise. Pulling myself of the machine I had been sat on for the past hour, throwing Alexander the towel he had handed me, allowing him to wipe the non-existent sweat from his Richardac. I allowed myself to sneak a few mere seconds to glance at Alexander. I blame the butterflies in my tummy I feel around him on the mate bond, but there was no denying that this man wasn't constructed by God himself. I quickly avert my eyes when I feel his glance on me. The last thing I wanted was for his head to grow even larger. For the past couple of weeks my mind has barely wandered to the whole I'm living with a beast thing. He had been extra kind and careful with me. It was starting to scare me. Was there something else that I didn't know about? But I tried to rid myself of these thoughts whenever they appeared. For the first time in months I felt comfortable with him, happy even. However, I couldn't deny the aching feeling that was left within me, which would creep up slowly every couple of days. When I was alone and during the night when Alexander was asleep and I was lying awake. I missed my family and friends desperately, but I knew that it would even be stupid to bring it up to Alexander. He would get angry with me and we would be back to square one, coldness. I could tell he was trying every day. He could tell when I was feeling off and he tried to distract me, and it worked sometimes. What's wrong? Alexander's voice interrupted my train of thought as he now stood in front of me. His hot breath bouncing off my face as I leaned against the machine. I was conformable but wanted things to remain slow. I mean, it's hard when for months I was convinced Alexander was a serial killer that kidnapped me and his end goal was to torture and kill me. Want to drop me off to Grandma's? I asked, ignoring his previous question. Going to Grandma's was the closest thing I had to seeing my family. There I would FaceTime my parents and talk to them for hours on end. I usually went every Saturday, but I felt as if I needed my own space tonight. I wanted to tell Grandma and my parents about school, and I felt as if I would finally have the courage to call my friends back home. For weeks visiting Grandma's I have hesitated calling my friends. My grandma explained to me they were told that I was staying with her for a bit. Can't tonight, love, I've got a pack meeting to be at in a half an hour, Alexander mumbled as I felt my heart sink in my chest. Despite being able to have a lot more freedoms, I was still restricted and I knew I would never fully be allowed to do what I wanted when I wanted. What about if stay the night there? Richardoro is Friday and you can pick me up Richardoro night. I try one hopeless attempt, and I feel my hopes slightly get up when I see something flash in Alexander's eyes before I felt his body slump. His hand reaching out and grabbing a hold of my waist. Sorry baby, not tonight, he sighed. I already knew his answer before the words left his mouth, however it didn't make it hurt any less. I knew why he didn't want me going over there too much. He didn't want to get me too attached to anybody else, as when it is time to leave each time I try persuade him for a little longer. He pulled at my waist at an attempt to pull me closer to his body, which is rejected, grabbing his hand and throwing it off my waist, making my way towards the gym door. I was acting childish, I know, but despite me being aware of his secret, he still held control and power over me. Less of the attitude. I heard Alexander's voice call from behind me. But I had already the gym door shut, and I was making a beeline for the elevator hoping I could get in it quick enough that I wouldn't have to be in the same lift as him. I'm leaving now, love. If you need anything, all you have to do is go downstairs and ask someone. Alexander bent down on his hunkers to meet my eye level as I was sprawled out on the sofa flicking through the newly added Netflix movies. I looked past his face, continuing to concentrate on picking out a movie as his hand reached out, placing it on my cheek and pushing me to look in his direction. I won't be back till late, so don't wait up, okay? He further speaks, attempting to gain a response to me, only to be met with more silence. After a few moments he seems to give up as he returns to his full height and shakes his head before he turns and walks out of the living room. I close my eyes and lean back into the sofa. I was acting like a child and I was aware of it. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for my newfound freedom, and I know it's hard for Alexander, but I only want to go to my grandma's house, who lives around a 15-minute drive away. I don't understand. No danger will suddenly come to me within a night of being there. Plus, tonight would have been the perfect night to stay as there is no school on a Friday. Terry explained that Friday is the day that wolves are permitted to enter the human town. The more my mind wandered, the more I felt the anger rise in my chest. For months I have sat back and allowed people to walk all over me, tell me what to do, and I wasn't going to allow it anymore. So what if it hurt Alexander? He has hurt me plenty of times before, and it was time he treated me like an adult. He knew I wasn't going to run away. I wasn't stupid anymore, and I knew this mate thing was permanent. All I wanted to do was to go to my grandma's house, and I was going to do that, with or without his trust. 37 Isabella SP. O.V. My teeth chattered together as the cold autumn breeze swept over my bare arms as I reached out my hand, forming a fist and quickly knocking on the small blue door, snatching my hand back as if someone was going to pull it off. After what felt like a full hour of agonizing anticipation, but what really was a few moments, the door was pulled open to reveal a disheveled-looking Benjamin. Isabella, what's wrong? Is everything okay? God, you're freezing. Benjamin's voice rushed out as he stepped outside his door, his long slender arms reaching out and taking me by the shoulders, his eyes wandering up and down my body wildly, as if he was physically accessing me to pinpoint anything that could be possibly wrong. Once his eyes finished scanning me, they quickly wandered behind me as if he was looking for Alexander. Yeah, everything's fine, I began as Benjamin let out a breath of relief at my reassuring words. However, he only held on to that relief for a moment as he held a firm grip onto my arm and began pulling me inside his house once he noticed the thousands of goosebumps forming as the night air only got colder. What are you doing here by yourself? Did something happen to Alexander? His stern voice cut mine off as he closed the front door of his house. His eyes bore into mine as I felt a panic begin to creep in. Maybe he wasn't the best person to go to for this. He was completely loyal to Alexander. I should have expected that he was going to throw a million questions at me and not let me away that easy. My eyes wandered past him as my brain worked quickly in order to form an appropriate and viable excuse. Despite the 25-minute walk over to Benjamin's, not once did my mind wander to the bullshit I was going to have to feed him. I was too busy feeding off my own anger and stubbornness. Alexander's at a meeting or something. He told me to come here and ask if you would be able to drop me off at my grandma's that is off the pack territory. He didn't have time to till really late, so he thought that if you were doing nothing else then you could bring me. My voice rushed out as my statement came out more like a question, only adding to how unconvincing it already sounded. However, it was the only thing my brain could muster right now. I held my breath as I watched Benjamin's face. It scrunched up slightly in confusion, and for a second I thought that my plan was now ruined and he had caught me out. I felt my Richardack fall slightly as I tried to search his eyes for any clues. However, they remained glazed over slightly for a few moments longer, only dragging out the agonizing anticipation that was building up inside me. He shut everyone out through Mind Link, Benjamin muttered, and I let out a deep breath of relief. If Alexander hadn't have shut everyone out, then this whole thing just would have went south in 2 seconds. I felt a small feeling of guilt beginning to grow in the pit of my Richardack the more I filled Benjamin with lies. He was just an innocent victim in my plan that would no doubt end with him being in a serious amount of trouble. It's all right if you don't have time, I began as an unsettling amount of guilt began to tear through me, taking over me and clouding my petty thoughts. My childishness shouldn't put other people in danger. What was I even thinking in the first place? Benjamin had been nothing but nice to me and protected me, and now I was just willing for that to go to shit. No, I have time, let me go grab my keys. How far away is the house? Benjamin interrupted me as he turned on his heel and headed through a door, probably grabbing the keys to his car. Bloody hell, there was no denying that I had a strong urge to piss Alexander off and go to my grandma's. I felt like I was finally ready to face my friends back home. I wanted to do things on my terms when I was ready and when I wanted to. I didn't think it was fair of Alexander to have that sort of control over me. I know about his secret now. I'm aware that no matter how hard I wished I wasn't attached to him for life that I was. I couldn't run away. What would be the point? He would never stop looking for me if I managed to get away, and what quality of life would I have then? Always looking over my shoulder. Never getting too comfortable in an area out of fear that I would be found. Pointless. But I had sort of come to terms with it in my head. I know I'm not going to get the college experience, the moving out on my own experience in dealing with life's hurdles. I know all that now. Don't get me wrong, I know Alexander is trying and I should be grateful for the freedom I have now, but I can't deny that there is something missing. The feeling of freedom of choosing what I want to do when I want. Isabella, aren't you coming? Benjamin's voice interrupted my thoughts as I realized I had been stood staring at the door he had disappeared into earlier, only to find now that he was stood at the front door holding it open, his keys dangling from his hand. Almost as if my mind was speaking rather than the guilt that was now eating me alive, my head quickly moved up and down as I walked towards the front door where Benjamin had served me a small smile, and all the reassurance I had given and feed myself before that I had to do this disappeared, and my Richardack was soon filled with guilt, dread and fear. Jesus, am I that bad of a driver? Benjamin broke the silence that had riddled the car for the past 15 minutes of driving. As I looked at him, my brows furrowed in confusion as he pointed at my knee that was bouncing up and down at a rapid pace. Yeah, shitty, I replied, smiling over at him as he let out a breath of laughter as my insides fell apart, and my smile instantly dropped. I was the worst person on the earth right now. You know, when the pack first heard that the Alpha had found his mate, I thought it would make him less harsh at pack training, that he would get off our asses for a while, but it only made him work as harder. Even when he wasn't at the pack trainings, because you know it was hard when you didn't know everything, he was in our heads. Pushing and pushing us. Obviously it pissed me off, but it was so obvious what was happening. Since you came, you changed him to be better. Benjamin spoke, his eyes flickering to meet mine every couple of seconds as his words sunk into my chest. His words didn't comfort me, which was no doubt his intention and purpose, but only added to the guilt that had filled me. I opened my mouth to tell him that I wanted to go back. I wanted to pretend I never went and lied to Benjamin. I would just be patient and wait to the weekend to see my grandma. Benjamin, I began, my voice coming out slow as my brain fumbled over the words I was about to feed out to Benjamin. However, I was interrupted by the sound of the engine of the car turning off. Here we are, Benjamin sighed as I looked up, and sure enough we were at the end of the driveway to my grandma's house, the locked gate preventing Benjamin from driving up to the front door. I'm sorry, I let out as I pulled off my seatbelt, yanking the door open. I couldn't help myself. Even if he didn't realize the real intent around my apology right now, he would no doubt soon know once he faces Alexander's wrath. For what? He questioned, his eyebrows furrowed in confusion. He was so innocent in the mess I had just purposely got him caught up in. For bothering you, I forced a small smile on my face as I had successfully hopped out of Benjamin's car, and was now leaning on the window to see his face. What are friends for? He threw one last smile as I backed away from the car, and the last remaining piece of decency I had left in me shredded. I had just fed my friend to the dogs. I took a deep breath as I turned on my heels. Coming here didn't even seem worth it anymore. I was a shit person for throwing Benjamin under the bus like that, feeding him lies which would no doubt end up with him hurt, and with what advantage? No doubt I would only be here for what? A mere half an hour before Alexander realized, and I would be back there anyway. This was my fault, no one to blame but myself. I forced my legs to move and walked towards the gate. I made my way over to the small plant holder, my hand fishing in blindly in search for the spare key I knew was kept in here. Darkness had fully swept over, and the light and protection from Benjamin's car was now gone. My hand soon clasped around the cold metal as I made my way over to the lock on the gate, my hand dragging across it, acting like a map as I fumbled around, pathetically failing at getting the key to even line up with the lock. Having a bit of trouble. A deep voice felt like a roar in the silence as it sent shivers down my spine, the hot breath bouncing of my neck as I felt my hands go numb and the key fell to the ground. I felt a hand being forced over my mouth as their body heat transcended over to me. My heart fell out of my chest as I flailed around in the person's strong grip until my eyes finally caught sight of whose arms were around me. I closed my eyes almost in relief mixed with shock as I pried his hand from my mouth as I turned my body to face the familiar face which I never thought I would get to see again. Lucas, I breathed out, squinting my eyes. Even in the darkness I could determine his distinctive features. I don't know if I should be overjoyed that he was the one that found me or scared. Was he still the same Lucas? 38 Isabella's P.O.V. You scared me, I barely managed to get out in a sentence as he had now released his grip on me and was now fumbling around on the ground in search of the key he had made me drop. Shit, I didn't mean to sneak up on you. His voice sounded different, deeper or something as he now straightened up to his full height. I couldn't make out his facial expressions in the dark night, but I could just imagine his small smirk playing on his lips. I shook my head, taking in a deep breath of almost relief. Part of me was happy to see him, know that after what happened he was still okay. However, my relief was soon washed away by panic. No doubt in less than 10 minutes Alexander would be here. Are you stupid? Are you trying to get yourself killed? My voice now sounded like thunder in the silent air as I attempted to lean forward and push his shoulders. He began, as he caught my hands that were trying to hit him, using it to pull me towards him. Alexander is going to be here soon. Please, Lucas, leave. Do you not remember what happened? Are you full of something? My mind raced as I was now shouting at Lucas. If Alexander wasn't going to kill him before, he defiantly would now. Calm down, Isabella, he breathed out as he sounded like he was suppressing a laughter at my claims. What are you honestly laughing at? I snapped, pulling my hands away from his, crossing them over my body as now the cold air had hit me. My previous numb feeling of being potentially kidnapped had faded. I just missed you. His laughing was now gone and his arms were now wrapped around my body, his heat warming my shivering body as I felt his hot breath down my neck. I felt myself lean into him as I took a deep breath. Nothing had changed, he was still the same Lucas. After a few seconds of forgetting the situation and remembering how when I was stuck up in that room, not having a notion where I was, why I was there, or that I was surrounded by wolves, Lucas was there. He kept my company, and when he did something to protect me, I took my anger out on him. Hey, I felt Lucas's warm fingers rub my face as I realized tears were now spilling out of my eyes. I'm sorry. You have to go. I pushed his hands off my face as I turned on my heel. He was okay, and that was all that mattered, and he needed to get as far away as possible. Isabella, Lucas's voice shouted after me as I turned my head to see his silhouette holding out his arm towards me. The key. Alexander has just rang me, Isabella. He will be here in 5 minutes. My grandma called from the bottom of the stairs as I peeked my head out of the bathroom door. After a 10-minute shouting from my grandma, I realized I would only have a few minutes to change my clothes before Alexander would get here. I read that werewolves can instantly know the smell of another werewolf, and I wanted to make sure there was no trace of Lucas on me. I looked at my reflection in my mirror, rubbing my puffy red eyes at an attempt to look like I hadn't been crying. Grandma claims that she didn't notice I was outside the gate literally shouting at someone. However, I don't know if I believe her. Will you come out to the car with me? I shouted down to my grandma as I pulled the jogging bottom on my legs and tossing the leggings I had on to the side. If Grandma was there, Alexander maybe wouldn't shout at me as much. You got yourself into this, Isabella, she called from the kitchen as her voice tailed off at the end, no doubt scolding me some more on how I was being stupid and that being too greedy would end up hurting me. I thought of all people she would understand me wanting to see and talk to my family. I sighed as a bright light shined through the bathroom window, peeking my head and spraying perfume on my clothes. My eyes landed on Alexander's truck. Shit, I mumbled as I watched as the truck came to a stop and my eyes focused on Alexander sitting in the front seat of the car. From here I could tell by his clenched jaw and tight grip he held on the wheel it wasn't going to be good. I turned on my heels, peeking my head around so I could see he bought Richard of the stairs to see my grandma walking towards the front door as Alexander's loud pounding echoed through the house. I closed my eyes. What did I honestly expect? He had already given way for so many things, and I possibly just blew it because of my head being too big. I took a deep breath as I strained my ears to hear the low mumbling going on at the front door before I heard it close again and my grandma returned at the bottom of the stairs with a bag in her hand. I furrowed my eyebrows in confusion as I met her downstairs, taking the bag out of her extended hand as I peered around the wall to see if Alexander was standing there, but I was met with nothing. You're staying the night? My grandma attempted to suppress the grin that was forming on her face as she didn't want to justify my actions earlier. Are you serious? I could barely believe the words that had left her mouth. Did Alexander get hit with a truck or something? What in the world was letting him allow me to stay over at Grandma's? I walked over to the window and peered out to see Alexander's truck hadn't moved from the position it was in and the lights were now shut off. The only light I could see was Alexander's phone shining up onto his face as he stared down on it. Was he planning on staying out there the whole night? I instantly felt a wave of guilt wash over my body. He was trying his best. Yeah, he frustrates me, but he was trying, and now after I left without telling him, he was letting me stay. I quickly grabbed a coat of the hanger and pulled it around my body and shoved a pair of boots onto my feet that were sitting at the front door. I felt as if I went out he would see me and remember how angry he was and take me back home. But the guilt that was now swimming around me would not let me go upstairs and ignore it. I pulled open the front door, instantly being met by the bitter night air as I kept my eyes pinned to the ground. Feeling his burning stare on me made me want to turn around and run back inside, but I forced my feet to move forward until I reached the door of the truck, quickly pulling it open and jumping on the seat before I could convince myself to back out. I was met with silence. The only noise filling the car was my heavy breathing and the running of my hands together in an attempt to feel some heat. Alexander must have picked up on this as he turned the car on, the heat blasting. I'm sorry, it was stupid, I know, I began, my voice rambling as my mind raced. There was nothing that I could say that would justify what I did. It doesn't matter. Alexander's softness laced in his voice surprised me as he cut me off. You're not angry? I asked, allowing my eyes to meet with his now that I had confirmed from his voice that they would not be filled with anger. I was. Alexander's short direct reply stung slightly as I searched his eyes but found nothing. I was confused. I would rather him scream at me and bring me back home rather than have no type of emotion from him. I'm sorry, I repeated because I didn't know what else to say. I could tell he wasn't tuned in fully as his eyes were glazed over slightly for a couple of seconds before he shifted in his seat, averting his eyes away from mine. Go inside, it's cold. Alexander sighed as he turned his phone on once more, his hands typing furiously on the screen, almost pounding into it. You're not going to come in? I asked. I knew if I was staying here tonight he would do the same in his truck, but it was freezing and my guilt was slowly eating away at me from the inside. He didn't respond, only shook his head, signaling a no. He had never been this dry and off with me, and whatever was happening back at the house must have been angering him further as he was releasing short puffed breaths as he typed. I pulled open the door and slid off the seat and shut the door behind me. I never thought I would see the day where I would be trying to get Alexander to talk to me. Usually the roles were reversed. I walked around the truck, glancing up at Alexander to see his eyes still glued to his screen but quickly shift when I pulled open his door. Please come in, I tried one last time. He had now turned off the light of his phone, the only light coming from the small one in the car, as he stared ahead as if he was debating my offer when I saw the sides of his jaw turn up slightly and I knew that he had forgot his anger for now. 39 Isabella's P.O.V. I raised my hand to knock on the familiar door now. A sense of dread and fear fueled by my guilt had eaten me away on my way here, and now I just wanted it to swallow me whole. Not only had I blank out lied to Benjamin, but I knew what Alexander would do and what he is capable of. Look what he did to Lucas, and I still used him to get what I wanted. My thoughts were interrupted, however, when before my hand could knock on the door it swung open, revealing Benjamin's large stance as if he was already anticipating me knocking. My eyes traveled up to his face as if to access his physical state. I took a deep breath of relief when I saw all was clear. He was okay. Hey, I mumbled after a few minutes of awkward after not one of us made a move. He gave me a small smile in return, which quickly dropped after a few seconds as he stepped out of the door, revealing a bag slung over his shoulder before turning his back to me and shutting it. Can I talk to you for a second? I asked as he had now turned and was walking down his little steps and onto the pathway at a quick speed. Sorry, Alpha called a pack training in 10 minutes. He didn't even turn his head to look at me but kept focused on the pathway ahead, walking around the slow-moving others on the path. I couldn't even blame him. I'll walk with you, I exclaimed in a slightly louder voice as I attempted to weave my way through the large amounts of people, ignoring the burning stares I was receiving. If Alpha sees me talking to you, he began as he had now stopped allowing me to catch up to him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have dragged you into it. I lied to you and got you into shit that you hadn't a clue about. I should have thought about you, but I just thought about my own selfish self. Please don't be pissed off with me. You're one of the only people I actually like here and don't think will murder me, I panted out in one breath. Mostly so I could say everything without forgetting, and the fact that I was out of breath from trying to catch up with him. My pace was that fast I'd be surprised if he could even make out a word I was saying. We were both now standing still on the path. the silence filled by the noise around us and mostly my heavy breathing. Spending months up confined in like 2 rooms really does you no favors. I never thought I would care about what people hear through about me. But I realized that my actions can harm them, and Benjamin didn't deserve Alexander's anger. 2 months ago I wouldn't have cared. My main goal was to get out of this place. Now that I realized that was never going to happen, I had to realize they were people too, with emotions and feelings. "You're forgiven, you dick." Benjamin's words instantly made me feel better and reminded me I had to be a better person. Just because I was hurting doesn't mean I had to hurt other people. "Benjamin, you're not going to regret it." I smiled as I leaped at him in a hug. After the whole Lucas thing, I didn't think I could find another person I could fully trust here. But now I know I can trust Benjamin. I didn't realize I had hugged him with such force that he winced slightly, his face screwing up with pain, which he quickly tried to cover with a smile. I quickly let go, my eyebrows screwing together in confusion as I reached my hand out with the intent of poking him in the ribs, only for his hand to stop me. "Intense workout last night, a bit sore," he breathed. I opened my mouth to question him slightly, then shut it when I realized he wasn't going to tell me the truth. I knew he was lying. You couldn't be that sore from a workout, plus he was a wolf. How could he be in that much pain? My thoughts immediately went to Alexander, and what he probably did to him when he realized he was the one who brought me to Grandma's, and instantly another wave of guilt began to spread in me. I just nodded. It was my fault. I had to be more careful, not only for me but for the people I had grown to care about here. I almost got Lucas killed, and now Benjamin got hurt because of me. "See you later," he asked, breaking the silence I didn't even realize was between us, as I had even lost in my own mind. I nodded, smiling, before he took off in the direction I'm guessing the training was at. "Heard about your little escape the other night. Thought we weren't that bad anymore," was the first thing Wes said as I sat down at the table at break time, causing the rest of them to laugh and me throw a dirty look at him. "Shut up," I replied, which caused more laughter from them. Being here at school with my new friends, I think, made me feel like a normal teenager, and reminded me that wolves were not the monsters I had formed in my mind, and made me feel happier. "Honestly didn't think you would have it in you," Anton added, causing further laughter as I elbowed him in his side. I was glad I met them. They treated me like a normal 17-year-old and didn't let their fear of Alexander stop them from acting normal around me. Not joking, I think they were the only ones in this whole school who weren't afraid of him, from the jokes they made to their questions. I wasn't escaping Dick, I just wanted to go to my grandma's for a while, I defended myself as I turned around, seeing Benjamin leaning against the far wall, his eyes dropping down to his phone when he seen me looking, no doubt listening to the conversation, as he had a small smile on his face and shook his head. "You better start planning a better escape plan for 3 weeks," Wes piped up once again as the laughter died down, and Terry shot him a dirty look, and soon after he let out a wince of pain. "What was that for?" he asked as Terry once again threw him the dirtiest look. I'm assuming she had kicked him under the table. What was he talking about? After silence entered the table for a few minutes, I racked my brain trying to work out if Alexander had mentioned something that was meant to be in 3 weeks, but I couldn't think of anything. I knew it had to be serious when Wes and Anton didn't try to make further jokes about it, but what? What's in 3 weeks? I asked, interrupting the silence that now swallowed the whole table, which was just followed by an exchange of looks between the three and more silence. This was the first time I had ever seen them actually be really scared of something, like they told me something that I wasn't supposed to know. What could be worse than finding out that they were wolves? "Just tell me," I tried once again as I began to grow slightly worried with a bit of anger. They can't bring it up and then not tell me and expect me to be okay with that. "Isabella, I thought you knew. I really don't want Alexander to find out that I told you. He would literally kill me." Wes' tone was laced with worry as he broke the silence. It was literally eating at me, not knowing what he was talking about. I felt my selfish side crawling forward and demand to know what he was talking about, but then I remembered Benjamin and what Alexander did to him. "No, it's fine, I'll just ask Alexander myself," I smiled. If I just asked him, no one would get hurt, but if I made Wes tell me, then he could get hurt and it would be my fault. "Your wedding." "Isabella, it's your wedding," Terry blurted out after another few moments of silence, as no one knew how to pick up the conversation again. Her words made me go pale, and I felt like the whole room had gone silent. I felt like I heard her wrong because I knew she couldn't have been talking about me. "Isabella, are okay?" I felt Benjamin's hand on my shoulder pushing me slightly as I realized almost everyone had gone from the room now. The bell must have gone and Benjamin stood beside me as I felt like someone had literally slapped me in the face to remind me that I wasn't in control, and Alexander was the biggest dick I had ever met. If you're captivated by Isabella's story, Don't forget to subscribe to get the exciting content of the next episode.